Often lately we have heard the recently coined term food insecurity, meaning that people didn't have a consistent amount of access to enough food for them to be healthy. I am arguing today that America is rapidly shrinking into moral insecurity, meaning that morality has become so disregarded and denigrated that people don't have a consistent amount of conscience to care about foundational morality, so much so that our society is unhealthy. Candace Owens had a show on YouTube, and I'll try to remember to put the link below, where she revealed that Kim Kardashian and her then boyfriend Ray J made a recording of them having sex so they could release it, leak it, so that Kim could become famous. What's troubling to me is that she thinks pornography would be a worthy path to greatness. But it's also troubling that she figured enough people would want to watch it that the plan would actually work. Well, as most of you know, today she's worth more than $1 billion. It shows what our country and the world is like. A few weeks ago, I read that a crowd of pro-choice advocates were heckling pro-lifers for being murderers. Now there's a twist. It was their stance that people who are pro-life were murderers because shutting down the abortion clinics would kill women. It's quite a twist of logic and morality, and also what psychologists would call transference, accusing others of what you yourself are guilty of. We all know that the internet is filled with clickbait, which is nothing but lying to gain viewers. You see a picture and a headline, and if you click on the article, it has little or nothing to do with that picture or headline. It's simply astounding how many liars there are in this country and the world. Deceit is the road to success. And do you know how much spam I get on my computer every day? Probably the same amount you do. People trying to cheat us. We live in a morally sick world. It's been proven that the mainstream media lies to promote a particular agenda. Viewership is a higher priority than integrity. We know that our large cities are wallowing in violence and poverty. Punishments for crime have waned. Police forces have been reduced. Homelessness is up. And instead of people taking responsibility, they gladly take advantage, shamelessly stealing fortunes from stores. Their consciences have been looted by a culture training them to think only of themselves and money. Pornography and sex trafficking are on the rise. It only works that way because there is a soaring mass of people wanting it. It's a moral pandemic. And of course, all this in a country where nearly 70% of the people claim to be Christian. So what's going on? We live in a world with such a skewed sense of self, where evil is a right and goodness is considered to be unreasonable. We have been crying my truth, my rights, my happiness for so long that we have lost any sense of obligation to what is actually good and right. Robert Bork wrote, quote, "A nation's moral life is the foundation of its culture," unquote. If that's the case, our foundation is collapsing. The origins of this moral black hole are multiple, but the main ones in my consideration are the systemic approval and rewarding of immorality, then the legislation of that immorality to codify it, all accelerated by the decline of Christianity and the pernicious plague of hypocrisy on the part of Christians. We've created a civilization so nihilistic and mercenary that we don't even feel guilty that our consciences are turning to self-serving swill. For that matter, we are turning into a nation of individuals who will threaten anyone who dares to disagree with them. The course to a cure can only be a regeneration and restoration of a spiritual foundation to society. And I'm not talking about theocracy in America, Christian nationalism, cultural Christianity, or religion-endorsed American hypocrisy. I'm talking instead about the fusion of a genuine devotion to Jesus, morality, and integrity. Now, what in the world would motivate anyone to do this? Only when you become convinced that the way we're going is so detrimental and dangerous to you that you might try something else. You know, as long as you think you can still gain by violence, self-centeredness, and greed, you won't try morality, integrity, and real Christianity. So I guess the question here is, how low do we have to sink before people will pursue the path that will actually help? Let's talk about when you think this transformation will come about.